Uh, Before I invite Michael to speak, I would like to take a couple of minutes to tell you about the book. I read this book. I am fortunate that I got a copy of that book. The students, organizers of this event gave it to me. And I found that book truly amazing in the sense that I can say it safely that today, it sounds kind of funny, but I feel I understand Michael better than I understand myself. As I said, it sounds funny, but somehow it is true. I tell you why. Because Michael understands himself very well, better than most of us understands ourselves. And the way he has described his events in life, tells so many things about him that it's really amazing. And Sri Sri Ravi Shankar has very mysterious ways of training you. In fact, one of the standard things in art of living is that always a square peg is put into a round hole. You are never given the job which you are trained for. And that's a standard. If you are a good scientist, you will end up in the kitchen and vice versa. So Michael has the first-hand experience of that, and not once, but so many times, which has been described in that book. And before I invite him, I will just quote one sentence from that book, which Sri Sri told Michael, is that he asked him that please remember that a diamond cutter only cuts diamonds. That was addressed to him. So ladies and gentlemen, the cut, polished and shining diamond from Art of Living Foundation.
Good evening, everybody. It's very nice to be here. I'm very honored to be here. You want me to use that one? I like this better. Is that okay? Good. Just so I have a frame of reference of who I'm talking to, how many of you have already done the Art of Living course? Oh, almost everybody. Okay. How many have not done the Art of Living course? Oh, almost everybody. How many of you are faculty here? Almost everybody. How many are students? Oh. How many have no affiliation with the university at all? Just a few of us. Okay. So I thought I would spend a little time this evening talking about my spiritual journey, and then I could open it up for some questions and answers. And then after that, I was thinking we could do a small little guided meditation. Would that be okay? All right. So, where to begin? Usually, when it comes to spirituality, it's something that's not discussed, I think, in most university environments. Usually, there's a connotation about spirituality, and it has to be kept separate. Education is done in a very secular manner, and spirituality has some connection with some higher power somehow, and we don't want to contaminate our students with, ideologies of some sort or other, so we keep that separate. Is that the way it is here? Yes or no? So, but to me, if you're a student in a university, you're not just training your intellect so that when you leave the university you have all the skills that are required. There's something more that you need to be successful in life. And to me, that's personal skills. What do you think? If you have the best technical skills, you excel beyond anybody else. No one can touch your technical skills. But you have zero personal skills. Do you think you're going to be successful? How many feel as though it's the personal skills may be even more important than the technical skills? To me, those those personal skills that are required in life on every level, regardless if it's in your career, in your marriage, with children, with family members, that skill, to me that's spirituality. Spirituality and naturalness are synonymous. The most spiritual person I know is the most natural person, and the most well-integrated individual who has the ability to take unlimited responsibility in life. To me, that's a way to move. Are you following what I'm saying?
Yes.
And also I feel as though when we talk about spirituality, usually it's connected with some affiliation to some teacher. And for me, my path and the spiritual path, there's a guru involved. And I think all of us have some concept of what that means to be affiliated with a guru, whether you're from the West or whether you're from the East. And that concept that we have many times prevents us from taking a step towards spirituality. Yeah, I know what that's all about. My grandfather was into that. My grandmother was in. It's not for me. But yet, if you don't, when you come to a university, I would assume that you're looking at the quality of the leadership of the university if you're a student here, and you really want to learn from somebody who has mastered their subject level. And the more credible the professor is, the greater they have the ability to help you and to train you and to help you with your technical skills. Is this correct? Don't you want to learn from the best? I know if I was going to want to learn how to play golf, I would want to learn from a golf pro. And if I was going to learn tennis, I would want to learn from a tennis pro. If I was going to learn a language, I would want to learn from somebody who is completely fluent in that language. Yes? And if I was going to study computer science, I would want to speak to somebody who has mastered computer science. Whatever the subject is, I want to go to a master. Now, if we're dealing with the mind, which is something that's so abstract, completely abstract, wouldn't it make sense? It's the mind that affects the quality of our life. Our personal skills, our abilities to interact with everybody, to be cordial, to cooperate with other people, that skill comes from the mind, right? So I would like to learn from somebody who has mastered the mind. And that individual we call guru. Guru is somebody who has reached that zenith of consciousness that there are no more obstacles left in the mind. What do I mean by obstacles in the mind? All the trials and tribulations that you go through, all the worry, all the anxiety, all the frustration, all the negative emotions that we have, that does not exist in somebody who's living that state of, let's call it, enlightenment, clarity of vision. And if you think about it, all the obstacles that we have in our mind are what prevents us to being most effective and efficient at any task we want to do. Here at the university, I'm sure so many times you've had to focus and concentrate on various things, take a final exam, study for something. How many times have you had this where you've had to read something and you've spent 20 minutes reading something and you have no idea what you read? Do you have this experience? Of course. Why is that? Because you're not with the subject matter. There's something else that's engaging your mind. And usually what's engaging your mind is not something pleasurable, it's something that's unpleasant. Some negative emotion that you're experiencing, some worry about something that's going to happen somewhere in the future, right? So unless we have a say over our own mind and our own emotions, our personal skills are going to be very less, and it affects the way we're able to concentrate and to focus throughout the day. So to me, having mind control, not like controlling your mind, but having a say over yourself is such an important skill. Where do you learn that? Do they teach that in school here? Is that a class that you take, how to handle your mind and emotions? How about before you came to university? Did you have those classes? Do you see the necessity of that? We live in a world where we're moving towards everybody being literate, but do we have literacy over our own mind and our own emotions? Literacy over your mind and emotions is what I would call spirituality. Because then you can really be the very best human being that you can be. If you're troubled in your mind, you can't be effective, you can't be efficient, you can't be creative. Creative thoughts don't come to your mind when you're troubled. Have you noticed that? When are you most creative? Isn't it when you're in the present moment? Yes or no? Do you find like just before you fall asleep at night, you come up with the best solution to something? Or maybe in the shower, you're just taking a shower and, oh, I have it. Now I know what how many have this experience? Because those times your mind is relaxed and those times your mind is present and creativity blossoms. So if we're lacking this skill of how to manage our mind and emotions, we're really working with a handicap. So okay, you graduated, you have high honors, you've gotten yourself a great position somewhere in some company, but emotionally you're a wreck, your marriage is not going to be very well, your relationship with your kids are not going to be very well, and your communication skills and the way you're going to have harmony with your work environment, it's going to suffer in some way, right? So what I'm really getting at here is just having us take a look at how essential spirituality is in our life. I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about God. I'm not talking about going to a temple somewhere or a mosque or a church. That's, to me, is not spirituality. Spirituality is understanding our own mind, understanding our own emotions, and having an ability to transcend the intellect, having the ability to transcend the feeling level, which I think is something that's so important. Unless the mind has deep rest, you're never going to rejuvenate your nervous system. When you sleep, you don't have that deep rest, that deep quality of rest. The mind is still active while you're sleeping. You're dreaming about this, you're thinking about that, this experience, that experience, desires that haven't been fulfilled, dreams that come up. How many of you have had the experience of waking up after sleeping for 8 hours and you're exhausted? So sleep doesn't give you that deep rest. What gives the mind deep rest is the ability to transcend. That experience we call meditation. Meditation is going beyond the chattering mind. And most of the time our mind is chattering. I'm talking to you. What is it, about 100 of us in the auditorium? There's 100 conversations going on at the same time. Isn't it? I thought he was taller. I didn't know. Oh my God, he doesn't make sense. Yes, he does make sense. You know, if I doesn't end soon, I have to do this paper. I have to go. I have to meet a friend. This is going on all the time. This is a disease of modern time. Chattering mind is not what we would call normal and healthy. Chattering mind, constant chatter, is not a healthy space to be in. And most of us don't know anything different. We're oblivious to the fact that there is actually space between the thoughts. If you're always having thoughts, no space between your thoughts, I would say you have a very unhealthy mind. If you have more space and less thoughts, you're healthy. But in society, we have become so fast. We have cell phones, we have texting, we have emails, we have Facebook and Twitter and so many different ways of communication and so much responsibility on us and so many, the world has gotten so fast. And you're here training your mind. Intellect is superseding every other aspect of our life. How do you turn it off? How do you just chill? If you don't have that skill to chill, you're lost. It doesn't happen through exercise. It doesn't happen in the pub. You can have several drinks and still your mind is going. It may be blurry, but unless we have that experience of deep rest, we can't rejuvenate ourselves, and also we don't have the ability to have some say on our mind. Two things that really help us have a say over our own mind is breath and meditation. Breath is key because breath is directly connected to our emotions. Every emotion you have has a corresponding rhythm of breath. Are you aware of that? When you're angry, how do you breathe? And when you're relaxed, how do you breathe? It's different, isn't it? You know, in Stumbling into Infinity, I write about the fact that I was born in New York City, and eventually I moved all the way across the United States to California. And when I first came to California, I thought, you know what? Here I am in Los Angeles. It's the hub of Hollywood. Let me give it a try. Perhaps I could be an actor. And I was quite young at the time, 34, 33 years old. And I said, okay, let's give it a try. So I went to some acting classes. You know what the very first thing they teach you in an acting class? How to breathe. So if you're depressed, how would your breath be? Would your breath be exhalation? Would your exhalation be long or short if you were depressed? So which emotion is this? Is this joy or is this sadness? Is that joy? Sadness. So sadness is associated with a long exhalation. What about a long inhalation? Would that be associated with joy or sorrow? For example, if I was going to do a love scene, how would I breathe? It depends who the love scene is with. Okay, so which is this? Is this joy or is this sorrow? Which is that? Joy, isn't it? Joy is long inhalation, sorrow is long exhalation. So breath and emotions and mind is connected. So if you could learn to breathe in a particular way, I know you're all breathing and you've mastered breathing. You've been doing it your whole life. Good. You don't need to learn how to re-breathe. But using the breath as a modality, as a way to have a say over your emotions. And in Art of Living, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar came up with this technique, Sudarshan Kriya, which is so powerful for getting the negative emotions out and quieting the mind. But it doesn't end there. That's just the first step. The second step is, I think, more important, meditation. You can't meditate if your mind is troubled. But once you've learned to quiet the mind through the breath, now going inward and experiencing something that is amazing. Yeah? So a little bit about the book and a little bit about my spiritual journey. So I was born in New York City. I'm the son of a Holocaust survivor. My family is Jewish. We were not very affluent or wealthy when I was a small child. In fact, we lived in a small one-bedroom apartment, my sister, my parents, and myself. And when I was around 3, 4 years old, I was visited by my grandfather in the middle of the night, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 in the morning. He was standing in front of my bed. He didn't live in our apartment, and I was startled because he was there. And he was standing there with his pencil-thin mustache and his beautiful white hair pushed back, and he had this blue pinstripe suit he was wearing, and he was just staring at me. But it really wasn't my grandfather. It was an apparition of my grandfather. It was just a cloud of smoke. And seeing him really scared me, and I started to scream. And my sister woke up, she saw the same thing, and she started to scream. And then it took probably most of the rest of the night before my parents were able to quiet us down and get us to go back to sleep. And sometime after that, 2 days, 3 days, I was so young I don't remember, my mother sat me down and explained that Grandpa had died. And I was very close to him. Maybe that's why he came to visit. I was the youngest of the grandchildren. And when I understood that Grandpa had died, something just, I understood and it troubled me. If he died, that means I'm going to die. And if I'm going to die, then what's the purpose of this existence? Where are all my memories going to go? And all the fun that I've had, where's that going to go? And what's the experience going to be like when I die? And I was lost. I didn't understand. Here at least you have cremation as the way to go. In the US you get buried. So I would bury myself under my blankets and make myself a mummy. I was 4 years old and I would think, okay, for eternity, this is how I'm going to be. And I didn't understand my existence. And who could I talk to? I went to my mother and I would talk to her. She'd think I was a very depressed child. She'd make me some hot chocolate and make me sit down and watch TV. It didn't really help much. My father, a Holocaust survivor, I couldn't talk to him about death. My grandparents died in the war and my aunt died in the war. So I couldn't really talk to him about that. I went to a parochial school, a yeshiva. It's a religious school for Jewish kids. And I would go to the rabbis and I would ask them about death. And they thought I was a morose child and they would call my mother to take me home. They never gave me any answers. And it wasn't until I was in the 5th grade, maybe I was 11 years old, we had a substitute teacher. I don't know if you remember when you were a kid and you had a substitute teacher, what that meant. But at least in my class, that meant you were bunking off for the day. You didn't have to pay attention. But this teacher was so cool. He just was, he had a little goatee. This is back in the 1960s. His hair was a little long. He was a beatnik. I don't know if that means anything to you. But, and he was just very charismatic. And he was talking to us about history, world history. He spoke a little bit about Asia, India, and China. And then he brought up Buddha and Buddhism. And he explained that Buddha taught that there's a wheel of birth and death. And you keep coming back again and again and refining life and learning lessons to life. As soon as I heard that, it was like, that's it. We don't die at all. We're just energy and we get transformed and energy never gets destroyed and we kept coming back again and again. I had never heard of reincarnation. This was an epiphany for me. I wanted to shake all the other kids in the class and say, this is it, we don't die. But they were throwing spitballs at each other and they were flying paper airplanes. No one was interested. But for me, this was a great realization. But I still wanted more. I wanted to understand the meaning and what is the purpose of life. And it kept going and going until I was maybe around 25 years old. And being a child of the 60s and the 70s, I became a hippie.